What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So every 4 years, while we have the Olympics, we also have a game to go alongside of that from Mario and Sonic teaming up to take on their own Olympic Games. Well, this year, we don't actually have one, and now we reportedly have the reason, which isn't exactly great. We're going to go over that, though, here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft and their recent financial report showing Xbox sales once again way down. But some of their comments and other numbers, they don't really seem to mind that much. And then we also have some previews for Star Wars Outlaws that went live, giving us a look at the good and some of the bad. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with PlayStation VR 2 that did see a sizable discount all across different retailers on PlayStation's main store, as well as on Amazon, where it was down to like $350. Well, surprise, surprise, that actually spiked sales quite dramatically, apparently. We can see this is posted up. This is over on The Shortcut, who had apparently an exclusive for this one, with PSVR 2 sales surging 2,350%. This just in one day based on their data. And again, it got marked down, the PSVR 2, $200, and they say even after 24 hours, PSVR 2 is completely sold out at Amazon, which I took a look, and yeah, it is sold out. They do have like the bundle still. You can pick up the Horizon bundle, but that is more expensive, obviously. Just if you're getting it for PC specifically to go alongside of that adapter box, you don't really need the Horizon game with it, so it makes sense why that one specifically would sell out, since there is still some interest around this headset, I'm sure, from PC owners, now that it's being fully opened up here to Steam with that application to follow along with the headset when that adapter box comes out in the beginning of August. But yeah, it's not a shocker to see that a headset that is fairly capable, actually all things considered with some of the features around it, while some are disabled for PC, it's still a higher quality headset at $350. Yeah, you're going to have people more interested in it, but 2,350% jump when the sales were already pretty low doesn't necessarily mean that a ton of them are flying off the shelves, but right now it's technically tracking in the right direction. Also, we do have a game now heading into Game Pass in the first half of August, which we can see this was revealed over on Xbox's Game Pass official account, where they say a remade classic is on its way. The Mafia game Definitive Edition is coming August 13th. I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was very good. I picked it up when it came out. Oof, it's almost 4 years ago now, which it's incredible to think it has been that long since it came out. But visually speaking, I thought it was really good. And I mean, the original definitely needed that kind of remake treatment, and it got it here. It was already on PlayStation Plus, but now also going into Game Pass, it's just good to just see more people be able to try it out and, of course, add some more value there to Game Pass. And then on the other side, for PlayStation Plus Classics, it appears that a PSP, but also a PS2 game maybe, is going into the service, as it seemed to have leaked out a bit early through an email that Sony sent out. We can see this was posted up. This is over on Push Square. They are quoting Radic, who says an email from PlayStation Advertising PS Plus accidentally mentions Secret Agent Clank, which is currently not on the service. And Secret Agent Clank, if you haven't figured out, yeah, it is technically like a spoof of James Bond. And I remember this on the PS2. I didn't play it on the PSP, although back then the PSP to PS2 conversions, they weren't that different from one another. Not like if you went from the GameCube to the Game Boy Advance, they had to rework the whole thing. So I didn't really have a lot of time to necessarily check out Secret Agent Clank. I'm not very familiar with that one, so I would be interested in checking it out if it did indeed go into the service. And for what we've seen with Sony, they're certainly throwing a bunch of PSP games in there, and that's kind of the version I would expect, but who knows, maybe they'll surprise us and drop the PS2 version in instead. We'll just have to keep an eye out for the PlayStation Plus Classics tier, maybe heading into August.
Today's video is sponsored by World of Warships Legends. Set sail in a massive multiplayer free-to-play game where you scout and destroy your enemies with powerful warships. Think strategically to win. It's not just about quick reflexes like a fast-paced FPS. Here, you'll need to plan your moves around a thoughtful play speed. World of Warships Legends offers a number of play modes from 9v9 to 3v3v3v3 formats. The Xbox and PlayStation are fully utilized here, so you can kick back and play on the big screen, or play on the go using your iOS or Android mobile device. Players can choose from 11 different nations stations as well as Pan-American ships. Every 5 weeks, the fleet grows even more with new ships and missions added regularly. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers all bring different characteristics to use when you build your custom fleet. World of Warships Legends is easy to learn with players becoming skilled in just a few matches, and the opportunities are endless to upgrade your skill, your commanders, and your fleet. Now you can celebrate the latest collaboration with Star Trek. That's right, players can unlock 4 new Star Trek commanders, tour the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, and more. New players can also receive rewards with a welcome pack that includes things like an American Tier 3 Premium Battleship Arkansas, 7 days of premium account, 5 common crates, and more. Click the link in the description below and join the 8 million World of Warships Legends players today. Hurry up and log into the game now to unlock a unique Star Trek port and complete a special mission to get one of the thematic commanders, Commander Picard, for free. Thanks to World of Warships Legends for sponsoring today's video.
And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. It's a franchise that started back on the Wii and the DS and has been running ever since to go alongside of, well, shocker, the Olympic Games. We've had like Winter Olympic sports, we've had just the Summer Olympics, which going back to Tokyo 2020, that is actually one that was somewhat popular. I remember even on Amazon, it was actually pretty far up there in terms of the rankings for best-selling video games that month. But as people have noticed, there's not a new one to go alongside of the Olympics that are actually happening right now. Well, we can see this is over on Twitter, and this is from Lee, who says, for the people that are asking, there will be no Mario Sonic games for Paris 2024. The franchise finished with Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. I know because I worked on all the games in the franchise. Well, that seems like a pretty good source then, since, well, they would know if one's coming out because they would have worked on it. Also, it probably would have been announced by now since, you know, the Olympics are going on right now in Paris, as noted here. Well, we did get a bit more information. This is from Eurogamer, who actually talked with Lee. They said, speaking with Eurogamer, a veteran behind the series has now said the decision to end the popular Mario and Sonic franchise rested with the IOC, which chose not to renew its licensing deal with Nintendo and Sega and allowed it to lapse in 2020. Are you ready for the reasoning? Well, here we go. Quote, they wanted to look at other partners and NFTs and esports. Basically, the IOC wanted to bring it back to themselves internally and look at other partners so they would get more money. Look, it's not shocking for technically a business-minded entity to say, okay, can we get more money? Let's look elsewhere. But this has been a long-running franchise, and while I will say I wasn't necessarily into the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games, I understand it was still, I would say, an important franchise. Going back to 2007 when it started, I remember that was the first time I looked and said, whoa, Mario and Sonic are in a game together. It was always that thing way back in the day, right? With the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, Mario versus Sonic, which games are better, Sega versus the Super Nintendo, or Genesis versus Super Nintendo, it was a whole thing then. So if you're old enough to really remember those days, you'll know it was a big deal when they showed up on the same screen together. And while it was just like the Olympic Games, there was a lot of competitive spirit there. So in that sense, it made, you know, it worked. Sure. And it's been ongoing since the Wii and the DS, and now seeing it pretty much come to an end, it's not really, again, it's disappointing, sure, but I have a feeling it's hitting people much harder than it would be for someone like me who just wasn't really into these games. That said, NFTs being brought up at a time where they're basically, I mean, they're already always kind of worthless in the sense that, okay, what do they actually do? But they at least had some price tag seemingly attached to them that made it look like, okay, we can at least have some sort of valuation from a business angle. Now NFTs are just like nothing, basically, like they're really worthless. So it seems strange that they would look around and go, yeah, NFTs, that's the move, rather than do another Mario and Sonic license deal, which they're not even making the game, right? They're passing it off to Nintendo and Sega to figure all of that out. It just seems strange to kind of break up that traditional franchise we've had running, like I said, since 2007 with the Wii and the DS. But yeah, if you were curious and you realized, oh wait, we didn't get another Mario and Sonic Olympic Games, well, there you go. That's why. Apparently esports and NFTs, strangely. Next up, let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws, which is a game that I've been following, mostly because I do typically enjoy many of these Star Wars games, especially the action-adventure games like Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor. Although I understand that lightsabers, force powers, that it's a little more interesting to me in that regard. But I will say Star Wars Outlaws, at least the concept of more focusing on the characters and the worlds rather than just being a Jedi, is at least interesting at its core. but I've had a hard time really buying into what they're trying to do here at Star Wars Outlaws because it just hasn't looked that interesting yet. However, previews did go live, and this happened yesterday, and it seemed like everyone had roughly 4 hours to sort of play this. And while I'm sure they were given like a designated path, like, hey, go here, this is to advance the story, it seemed like they were allowed to kind of run off the beaten path and do whatever they wanted for the most part in those 4 hours. And I will say some of these headlines did catch me off guard a bit. For example, Games Radar says, I spent 4 hours in Star Wars Outlaws open world and it feels like Red Dead Redemption in a galaxy far, far away. So a lot of praise there. There were other outlets that gave it high praise. I believe IGN as well. VGC really did appear to like their time with it. In fact, if you just want to see some gameplay of Star Wars Outlaws, they did about 20 minutes and posted it up over on their channel, which I'll link down below. And then also you have like ACG, who did a good job with their preview. Mr. Matty Plays, Skill Up. So there are many different people to see their thoughts on this game out there. And as I was going through, I did kind of pick some bits and pieces of information here. Okay, so it does, of course, take place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So they've said that before, but just a bit of a reminder there. The art direction, I've noticed many people pointed out that it feels very much like a Star Wars like game, like the look to it, the atmosphere, environments, the characters. It feels like they nailed that look to the Star Wars universe. It's more organic in finding side quests and missions, which is something I brought up, the idea of the Ubisoft open world checklist setup. Can they avoid that? It seems like they have been able to here, in the sense that when you go to an area, you might discover things yourself that then leads to quest lines rather than pop open your map, see icons everywhere, and you just go to each one and complete really quick rudimentary tasks. Does not seem to be the way they're going here. And while, again, I know there are people who are like, I'm not really interested in the idea of Star Wars Outlaws. Well, this would be really cool if this continues to move forward and be something they build on for some of their other open world franchises. The gameplay, though, seems pretty basic. So you do have, obviously, you're shooting your blaster. You also can hide and cover, and there's stealth, but it doesn't really seem to test the boundaries of any of those elements. So that part with the gameplay, pretty straightforward, and it's kind of a been here, done that sort of thing. But the reputation system was brought up by many people as well. And this could be the big game changer for this title, as let's say you side more so with one faction versus the other. It was mentioned that it can alter the story. You can get different rewards and maybe even have different experiences for each person playing through it, depending on which faction they go with at which point in the game. So I'm almost wondering if that would be a way for you to play through the game multiple times and have different experiences. The only issue is they had 4 hours to play it, so they obviously didn't get to see how something you do at the beginning of the game affects something at the end. So that's a part we'll have to wait for the full game with the full reviews to come out to see how that goes and how it all shakes out by the end. And of course, again, coming out August 30th. I'm still on the fence with this game. I am going to check it out because it's Star Wars. I'm curious to see if they pull in any maybe even familiar characters, or if this is something where it is like a surprise release for the year. We'll see with that one. But at least from some of these previews, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a train wreck of a game or anything like that. But we'll see when it comes out and I pick it up on August 30th. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft's financial report for Q4. That would be April, May, and June. Did give us a look at Xbox as well as just Microsoft as a whole, which, shocker, they're doing very well. In fact, they reported net revenue of over $20 billion for just the quarter. So Microsoft makes a lot of money, but how is Xbox doing? Because that's always the question since we're focused in on gaming, which we can see this over with Tom Warren. They go down the list here with Windows OEM revenue up 4%, devices revenue down 11%, gaming revenue up 44%, Xbox Content Plus Services revenue up 61%. It's very important to note, this is them comparing a Q4 now versus Q4 last year, when they didn't have Activision Blizzard. So keep in mind, without Activision Blizzard, they seem to be up roughly 3 to 4%. So not as massive of a jump as it appears here, but hey, they have Activision Blizzard now, so all you can do is compare to yourself from the year prior, and yeah, with Activision Blizzard, significantly spikes their revenue. But if you look at their Xbox hardware, it is down 42% from the year prior, that Q4, and that Q4 was down double digits from the year before as well. So, I mean, it is certainly not going the right way for hardware, although I guess technically being in the back half of the system's life, you would expect it to be dropping down in terms of sales, but not 42% of a number that was already down from the previous year. That's, I would say, slightly alarming for Microsoft. But then we have Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, who was discussing some of the results here. And they say in gaming, the company now have over 500 million monthly active users across platforms and devices. Our content pipeline has never been stronger. And remember, this has pretty much been the path forward for Microsoft. While consoles in general for them have not been selling up to Xbox One, Xbox 360, I mean, technically above the original Xbox at this point, but it hasn't been keeping pace with their more recent generations, but they are reaching more people and they are making more money than ever. Yes, a lot of that is pushing towards the software side versus the hardware, and Microsoft, they're a software company. So to them, this isn't really a big deal because I feel like if they sold Xboxes and it ended up being 20 million consoles for the entire generation, they'd be fine with that if their software was still at this point in terms of sales and their monthly active users were through the roof, which 500 million, I mean, they're counting Windows, they're counting PlayStation, they're counting Nintendo Switch because the Minecraft and any of the games they place there. So they're doing what they've been talking about for a while now, which is getting games as many places as possible, having people sign in and use these Microsoft services, and then counting them at the end of the year on their financial reports. The big question, of course, becomes, is it still worth it for them to make Xbox consoles if the number continues to drop? Like, if they get to a point where they would sell 10 million systems in a generation, would they still create hardware? They eventually fade into becoming, yes, just a software company or a third-party company, because that's not something really anyone should want, because then you would pretty much just have PlayStation as the quote-unquote high-end console manufacturer, as they'd be the last ones left making a box that you put under your TV with Nintendo, and making a hybrid system, of course, that's kind of hard to place in any one category at this point. So I'm hoping Microsoft does stick with that, and obviously they've already talked about how they are going to do at least another generation, and if that came out, say, in we'll say 2027, and you assume it would go another 6 or 7 years, we probably wouldn't really have to worry too much about that until, say, 2034. But at least, I guess in the sense of software, they're doing pretty well. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Xbox One, specifically the Xbox One VCR, as there was a situation that once again brings up the concerns around console system level DRM, because that is something the Xbox One has. In fact, if you factory reset an Xbox, you have to connect to the internet in order to then go through the setup process. Same thing if you just bought an Xbox One and it comes straight out of the box, right? Well, we can see this is over on Eurogamer, who did notice this, as well as other people sort of writing into them explaining it, saying that some original Xbox One units failing to update, disabling most console functions. What appeared to happen here is there's some sort of hiccup with these systems calling to the server and completing an update, which meant if you were on old firmware, so let's say you had an Xbox One VCR that you haven't turned on since 2017 or something, and you turn it on now, it would not have been able to pull the update and complete a setup, which means it would have just been stuck. It would have been bricked, basically. Well, the good news here, if that's you, they have managed to fix it. Jason Ronald over on Twitter says, for players who were having issues updating their Xbox One console, still running an OS build from November 2018 or earlier, this has been resolved. Then goes on to thank the team at Digital Foundry for notifying us about this issue. So they didn't notice it, most likely because they probably don't have a lot of people signing on to their Xbox One that's been in the closet since like 2018 or like in storage somewhere, not using it. The Xbox One VCR isn't exactly a great experience this time, but still, I think this is something that should at least raise some alarm bells just in general when it comes to this DRM level for systems. I mean, Xboxes in general have this, so who knows it. 10, 15 years from now, could run into something like this with the Xbox Series, and what if Microsoft is completely out of the hardware game 20, 30 years from now, and you want to check out one of these retro Xbox Series systems, and they're not going to go back and fix it then, it's just bricked completely. So in terms of just preservation in general, yeah, that'd be a problem. We see it with the PlayStation 5 and their disk drive, that if you buy that optionally, you need to do an update just to handshake it with the system. And who knows, maybe the future, Sony and Nintendo could also lean into what Microsoft is doing now, and that is a serious concern. So the whole DRM thing for a system is weird to me, because I feel like if you buy a console, there should be a way for it to just start up without having to connect the internet, because you bought that console, it should just be functional out of the box. So maybe that's something Microsoft looks into in the future, especially after seeing an example like this play out. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you played any of the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games series? Okay, 4% say yes, I play every one when it releases. I'm sure there are people out there who get them every single time it releases. And then 45% say yes, but only once or twice. That's kind of me. Like, if I'd go over to a friend's house or a family gathering or something, they might have had Mario and Sonic for one of the Olympic Games. And it is a fun thing to just sit down and play with the different mini games and stuff. For like a general audience, kind of a party setting, it makes sense. Or hey, if you went to like Dave and Buster's, they would have like a Mario and Sonic arcade cabinet there. And then 51% have just never played any of those games. But still, it is something that many people notice. Like, hey, where is this Mario and Sonic Olympic Games? Like, the Olympics are going on right now, and we didn't get an announcement. Well, there you go. Apparently, Nintendo and Sega got beat out by esports and NFTs, so back to Tokyo 2020. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Mario. It says, does anyone else think it's dumb that we are in a time where the controller to play the game costs more than the game itself? Even for the highest price games, like you can get third-party controllers that works for like $20. It just seems a little ridiculous. Not saying it's upcharge. I know corner cutting is done on one end and not the other. I'm just saying it's weird that first-party controllers are in a state where they are made to cost more than the games you would use them on, especially when shown what the alternative can look like. So for PS5, third-party controllers still are really not plentiful at all. So you're not gonna really find any of those for $20. But say on the Switch, sure, you can find them for $20. That probably not be the best controller. You can find them though. Technically, a pair of Joy-Cons is $80, so okay, yeah, I get it. Or even the Pro controller was what, like $60-ish, 65, something like that. But I get what you're saying. Yes, controllers now in general, across the board, are the same price or even more expensive than games. If you go back to the PS2, this was 2000 when the press release went out. I double check. $34 for a DualShock 2. So yeah, $15 less than what games were back then. But also, our controllers are significantly more advanced than controllers back then. I mean, we had to plug that, what, 6 or 7 foot cable into the system and sit on the floor to play it. Now we got all kinds of stuff happening with our controller. So bit of give and take there when it comes to the pricing versus the features. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Well, there's Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. None for 2024. Is it surprising to hear that they opted out of the Nintendo Sega deal for NFTs? And then also, what about Star Wars Outlaws? Are you more interested now after those previews? Or are you skipping it? And then what we're seeing right now with Microsoft and their Q4 financials, are you concerned that they're now down another 42% in terms of Xbox hardware sales? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.